Welcome to Biocanic's Health Intelligence Exchange community, where leading practitioners in integrative health approaches will discuss how they solve the most challenging and common health issues. These regular Q&A discussions are designed to take a deep dive into case studies and integrative approaches in order to elevate the collective knowledge of both experienced and new practitioners alike. Biocanic's Health Intelligence Exchange, your community for functional medicine.
Welcome to the Health Intelligence Exchange, everyone. I'm Laini Gray, the Strategic Accounts Manager for Biocanic, filling in for Jeremy today. And I'm joined with our guest, Elizabeth Gaines from FDN. Today, we're going to discuss navigating metabolic chaos, which highlights the complexities of metabolism and how environmental influences can impact health and how this will help real healing with your clients. A little bit about Elizabeth. She's a functional wellness practitioner and burnout specialist. She's certified through the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition program, helps people reclaim their energy and mental clarity so they can live vibrant lives. There we go. So they can live vibrant lives. She also works for FDN as their education director. Thanks so much for joining us, Elizabeth.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here with you, Laini.
Awesome. Well, before we get going, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the health field to start?
My mother, Blair, saved and sacrificed relentlessly so that she could enjoy her life later. But 2 years into her retirement, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now, I know a lot of us here are already in the health field. These are the stakes we're playing for. We don't always know what chronic disease is coming down the pipeline, but if we can help people in that functional space before disease presents itself, then we're saving lives, even though we'll never know it.
Awesome. That's really important. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think we all do have a story with someone in our lives or our own health journey that really is the catalyst. And that's really awesome to connect with that. So as we get started, we are talking a little bit about FDN today. So for those of us who are not familiar with FDN, can you please give us a brief overview of the FDN training program and how you became involved?
I sure can. So FDN is a functional lab certification program. So we teach you how to order functional labs, how to interpret them, and then how to write all natural protocols to deal with the imbalances that the labs show. I became involved because after a few decades of chronic stress, I found myself with chronic fatigue. And all the doctors I went to said, this is in your head. Like, all of your results are normal. And I'm sure all of us out there, or most of us out there anyway, have had this experience where we've gone to the doctor with real symptoms and real physical deficit, but because it hasn't crossed the line into a diagnosable disease yet, we get told you're normal and there's nothing I can do for you. So just take some antidepressants or take an anti-anxiety medication and just try and be normal.
Yes, been there, definitely. So I think what's really interesting is that FDN has coined the term metabolic chaos as a way to explain how the body is functioning in a diseased state. Can you speak to us a little more about this as a concept so we have a better understanding of what that really means?
Absolutely. So metabolic chaos is the brainchild of our founder, Reed Davis. Reed Davis pioneered the method that we now train and work in. And metabolic chaos is really the heart of it. And this is the idea that by the time you have a symptom, there's a bunch of things that have already gone wrong in the body. So potentially you had a root cause imbalance, or maybe you had 2 or 3 root cause imbalances, but they didn't stay siloed in this one place. They crashed around into all of their neighboring systems and organs and tissues and caused imbalances there. And those then crashed around into their neighboring organs and systems and tissues and caused imbalance. And then you get a symptom. And the symptom is vague and could be indicative of any one of these imbalances. So it is impossible to know from the symptom alone where the imbalance is rooted. And I think the mistake that a lot of practitioners make is that we assume that there is only one root cause. And maybe in the beginning, there was only one root cause, but now there are 20 or 30. And that's where the symptom is coming from. So the symptom is not telling us what is wrong. It is only telling us that something is wrong. And the idea of metabolic chaos is that we can't trace back all the imbalances that have come from even if we knew what the one root cause was. We can't trace back all the imbalances that have come from them. So it becomes incumbent upon the practitioner to test all of the foundational systems to get a picture of where function has been lost and by how much across all of those organs and systems and tissues, and then deal with those imbalances rather than trying to track back the one root cause, which is now an environment of chaos.
Excellent. I was just going to say, how does this compare to root cause approach? Because we so often in this industry, right? Let's get to the root cause. And so as you're speaking, I'm thinking of a couple of symptoms. So let's play this game. Elizabeth, I have headaches. What's causing this? Right?
Yeah. So your headache can be from a hormonal imbalance. It can be from chronic stress because you are like this all day long, because you're really stressed out. It could be again, structural because you're typing on a computer all day or sitting in a chair all day. It could be that your detox system isn't working properly. And so you've got a backup of a bunch of toxins that just don't have anywhere to go and they're manifesting in this headache. It could be that you're dehydrated because you're not drinking enough water. It could be all of these things.
I love it's true though, right? Because we always want to say, how can I fix my headache? Is it my hormones? Is it this or that? But I love that you're taking more of this metabolic chaos approach, meaning let's look at all of the systems. So when you're talking about that, what does that look like when you bring a client on or someone comes in to work with an FDN practitioner? What does that, how do we start the assessment or where do you start?
Yeah, that's a great question. We at FDN are true believers that everyone is bio-individual. So Reed likes to say we're all N of one. There is no one that is like us. So even if you've had 3 or 4 clients walk into your office with a headache, the thing that worked for the first client is not going to work for the second, third, and fourth client. It's not going to work for the 5th, 6th, and 7th client because we're all different. And the root causes and the imbalances that got us to this place are all different. So the first thing that we do is a very in-depth intake to really get to know who are you and how have you lived your life and what's been going on in your history. We ask them to do a self-assessment of their diet, their rest, their exercise, their stress levels, and their supplementation. We want to know what's been going on in the medical history. And then we have what's called the Metabolic Chaos Scorecard, where we look inside our 6 foundational systems and ask in a quantitative sense, what's going on in each of these systems for you? And how does that compare to what's been going on in the past? So we can see at a glance, are your hormones getting better or worse? Is your immune system getting better or worse? And once we have that, then we're going to move into our foundational testing. And we run the same tests on every single client, no matter what their health conditions, no matter what their symptoms, no matter what their complaints, no matter what their history. And we do this according to what we call our hidden systems. So this is hormones, immunity, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system. So we're going to run our 5 foundational labs to get a sense of, so you're in this place where you don't feel well, but you're not technically sick. So we don't want to ask the question, what disease do you have, or what is your diagnosis, or any of that. We want to ask the question, out of 100% function, what has been lost and where? And that's what really gives us a sense of this person's individual fingerprint or flavor or temperature of metabolic chaos. So we're going to look within those systems to see where has function been lost, by how much. Then we're going to bring that alongside the intake in what we call clinical correlation to say, okay, how have you lived your life? And what are your health complaints? And what symptoms are showing up for you? And how does this correlate to your lab results? And how does that explain you as an individual? So that's where we start with everyone.
Wonderful. I love that you brought up the clinical correlation and taking the self-assessments along with the lab tests, because often we hear, let's take a test to get to the root cause without that in-depth, investigation or self-reported or finding out where they actually have lifestyle factors that are playing a role in this.
And let me explain like why the one test is not going to get you there.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think we all have our one favorite test, kind of our pet test, where it's like, I like to test for hormones, or I like to look in the gut. And there's nothing wrong with having a favorite test. But when that's the only test you run, what's going to happen is, let's take hormones, for example. It'd be like, it sounds like your sex hormones are low. It sounds like you don't have any motivation, and maybe you're losing some hair and you don't have any libido and you're having trouble sleeping. So let's check out the sex hormones. And then sure enough, the sex hormones are low. And so then you're like, oh, great. I found the issue. The sex hormones are low. So then you write a protocol to raise the sex hormones. And maybe you'll even succeed at raising the sex hormones. And maybe that person will feel a little bit better, or maybe they won't. But what was the result of the sex hormones being low? Well, definitely the immune system is also suffering, and detox is probably slowed down, and digestion is probably slowed down. Energy production is going down. Nervous system is costing the body a lot of money from its vital reserve. And so if we don't look at all of those healing opportunities, then we're leaving 90% of the money that we could be returning to the body's bank account just on the table, because we just ran the one test. It works the same way with the gut test, where it's like, oh, it sounds like you have a parasite. With all your digestive symptoms, with your bloating and the gas, and like food doesn't go well, and you're up at night because the bugs are active at night. So let's run a gut test. Oh, sure enough, there's a parasite. Let's get rid of it. And yeah, somebody's going to feel better after you get rid of the parasite. But why was that parasite there in the first place? Probably because the immune system was compromised. The mucosal barrier is ripped up. Detox wasn't working well. And if you don't address any of that, you've left so much money on the table that could go back into the body's bank account.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that every system in the body is connected.
Weirdly, it is. I know. I have this sort of pet theory that because we've been through an industrial revolution, we have really likened our bodies to machines. And you hear this terminology all the time about like, oh, we just need to fuel in and fuel out, and like, fuel in equals output out, and that's the only equation for weight loss. Or, you don't need to sleep or any of these things, because machines don't need to sleep. And when something breaks on an assembly line, it's very easy to fix. It's like, oh, the timing belt broke. Let's replace the timing belt. The gear broke. Let's replace the gear. Oh, this particular lever broke. Replace the lever. And you see this now in standard medicine, where it's like you come in with a symptom and they're like, oh, your shoulder hurts. Let's only look at the shoulder. And it's that sort of simple machine thinking of it's isolated and it doesn't affect anything else. And it's a simple one level back fix.
And that's what a lot of people are experiencing, because now we've gone from a traditional medical model and where we're told, oh, everything's fine, let's just take this for your headache. And now they're seeking out an alternative or a functional approach, and they may be getting kind of the same thing, one test and one protocol, and then they come back with something else, one test, one protocol, and something else. So it's interesting, because Metabolic Chaos, what I love about it is that it does acknowledge that even though the original trigger may be gone, right? So you're saying we develop these over time. If we have the symptoms, things have been going on for a long time.
Yep.
And now we have these downstream effects that are driving different symptoms. How do you guide practitioners to stop chasing and start supporting their clients and patients and what the body is asking for right now?
Yep. So part of the trick of being a practitioner that runs lab work is not just to run lab work, but to run the right lab work. And for us, that means that lab work that is either just one test or just a couple of tests that sort of give information here and information there, this leads to islands of data. And when there are no bridges between the islands, then there's no way to look at these lab results in context. And therefore, that leads to what we call treating the paper, where my only option, if I don't have any context around this number on the lab report, is to implement a strategy to move the number on the page. So if I don't have any kind of context, then I'm going to put in a supplement, or I'm going to put in a modality like go get an enema, or put this red light device in your ears and let's see what happens. And I'm just sort of guessing. So the trick is really not just to have lab data, but to have lab data that is in conversation with itself, so that if I get a piece of data, I can look within the other results and say, hey, do you agree? Like, do you concur? Is this something you agree with? Or do you have a different point of view or deeper context or another window to give me on this particular lab marker? And when all the results then are in conversation because you're using a framework and a methodology, then you have a much better chance of implementing protocols that will make a difference, because you're not just sort of guessing, trying to move the number on the page.
I think that's great. I'm thinking in particular of digestive complaints, right? So a lot of times, and I've spoken to people, practitioners and clients alike, where they run a test, they have irritable bowel syndrome, which we know is a blanket term for everything,
Yep.
but they do all the, maybe it's SIBO, maybe it's something else, but they do the protocol and then it comes back. And then they do the protocol and then it comes back.
Yep.
And, having worked with some of those myself who have been to multiple practitioners first, why is it important that, this is what you're saying, is we need to look at the other, what's going on? Why does this keep coming back? Because obviously It's not the protocol got rid of this, but something else is influencing it.
Yeah.
So can you give us an example of how you, like a symptom or something you might see, and how those would relate in different markers through different tests that you're running? So how you could
let's talk about irritable bowel syndrome at first, since you brought it up. So irritable bowel syndrome, you can maybe control that with supplementation, maybe control that with some drugs, but what is actually driving that? And we have a marker on one of our labs called urinary bile acids, which speaks to the enterohepatic circulation of the gut, so that when bile is made in the liver, it goes to the gallbladder where it is stored. And then when you eat, the gallbladder squeezes out everything that's in that reservoir into the small intestine to help digest the fat and emulsify it. And then in that process, the bile itself gets digested down to the components of cholesterol and bile acid that were conjugated in the liver in the first place. Some of those bile acids are going to go out and be lost in feces, and that is why the body does attach some toxins to bile. But a lot of them are going to get recycled and come back to the liver. So when we can look at the urinary bile acid marker and see that it's low, then we can say, it is possible that too many bile acids are going to the exit rather than being returned to the liver. And that stimulates the colon to retain water, which can lead to the chronic diarrhea symptoms that are associated with irritable bowel syndrome.
Wow. Awesome. And then I know, especially being a burnout specialist, obviously there's a nervous system component as well, right? So we've got to be talking about that too, right? And which hormones are involved. So I really can appreciate looking at the whole picture rather than just that, honing in on that one specific symptom.
Totally. And with the example that you gave in the beginning with the headache, I've got this headache. Reed always likes to say, you don't have a headache because there's an aspirin shortage in your body.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you have a headache because a bunch of different things are out of balance.
Yes. All right, so here's an interesting one. So in a world where we have Instagram and Facebook and all these social media channels, and where clients are increasingly turning to influencers and peers for health guidance over licensed professionals, how does the FDN framework, specifically DRESS, help us re-earn trust and authority in a cluttered wellness landscape?
Yeah, this is a great question because I feel like I'm constantly battling the world of the influencers.
Yes.
Where like I go on Instagram. I'm like everybody else. Instagram is fun sometimes. And as I'm scrolling through Instagram, I'm seeing some dude like hanging off of a chin-up bar with one hand while he's got 100-pound weight strapped to his waist.
Mhm.
And that is what influencers are saying is exercise. Because that's what gets clicks and likes, is these very dramatic things where it's like, oh, let me cold plunge and hot sauna 6 times a day, because like I will reduce my stress by any means necessary. It's very American. It's really funny to me. But yeah, it's sort of like the more dramatic the intervention, the more clicks and likes you will get. But that's not necessarily what makes a healthy lifestyle. So we have to sort of come back to our ancestral roots. What were our ancestors doing for exercise? I think that we have this idea that our ancestors were up all the time, working all the time, in incredibly challenging environments. And their environments were incredibly challenging. But anthropological studies of Paleolithic societies reveal that they worked for maybe 15 to 20 hours a week. How many of you work 15 to 20 hours a week?
Yeah.
Not me, right? And it also reveals that they lived in these tight-knit communities where labor was shared, resources were shared. How many of you even have a carpool going on with your neighbors to get your kids to school?
Right? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And how many of you really trust that your neighbor has your back when push comes to shove, like when the chips are really down? We just don't live in that world anymore. So our nervous systems are already revved up and kind of like, I'm on my own and I got to figure everything out. Then you add kind of all of this chronic stress. Now, our bodies are meant to handle stress, and they can handle large amounts of stress, but not for very long. And that's the key. That's the trouble
Yeah.
with the modern life, is that we have chronic stressors all the time. From the minute we wake up to the time that we hit the bed, it is stressor, 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 stressor. I'm going to drive through traffic to get to work. I'm going to get to a job that I hate. I'm going to get yelled at by my boss. I'm going to have 15 surprise deadlines come up. I'm going to get an emergency call that I got to pick up my child. I got to drive back through traffic at the end of the day. I got to make dinner. I got to fight with my spouse. I got to get everybody prepared to go to bed and get up the next morning. And then as soon as I hit the pillow, I'm worried about, like, do I have enough money in my bank account? Am I going to be able to pay my taxes? Like, what did I not do on my to-do list? All of that is an environment that our ancestors were not living in. So we're already living outside of our biological design by carrying these massive amounts of stress for far too long. Stress is supposed to be occasional. It is not anymore. And I really find that FDN is the only program out there that even talks about stress as a part of why we are so sick today, and how we can actually do a comprehensive analysis of stress. So coming back to how does FDN dispense lifestyle advice and how do we gain credibility? I think the first thing is that we're really interested in how our clients live, and we get in there. We get in the weeds. It's like, really, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you actually getting 8 hours of rest? Do you have downtime during the day? Is there any time that you just kind of go outside and feel the sun on your skin, or feel the grass beneath your feet, or just close your eyes for a second? What is it that you enjoy doing with your exercise? Are you doing too little, which is not great, or are you doing way too much, which is also not great? Like, we really want to test how much money is in the body's bank account, and we want to match the exercise to that so that exercise stays beneficial and doesn't become another stressor. And then we really look at stress from a very detailed place. So we think about stress in 3 different ways. First of all, we think about stress as physical. I sit in this chair for way too long every day. I assault myself with blue light for way too long every day. Others of you out there who are massage therapists and my chiropractors and my acupuncturists, you've got repetitive motion going on in your hands and your bodies that's causing physical stress. Some of us have old injuries from when we played sports or when we were in car accidents or things like that. All of that is physical stress. Then we get to mental emotional stress, which is what most of us think of when we say stress. That's where the real juice is for most of us. And a lot of us don't even consider that there are other kinds of stress. But yeah, there's a lot of mental emotional stress out there in today's world. And we need to be honest with ourselves about what that is and really get in with our clients to say, what is that daily load of mental emotional stress that you're carrying? And then lastly, we consider environmental stress. So what is in my immediate environment? What am I cooking in? What am I storing my food in? What am I washing my clothes with? What am I putting on my body in terms of my personal care products? So my lotions and my makeup and my deodorant, my toothpaste. What is the quality of the air that I'm breathing or the water that I'm drinking? Where are other places in my immediate environment that I spend a lot of time, like my car or an office? What are the environments there? Do you work in a corporate office where they come in and clean it with industrial bleach every week? Do you work around a lot of chemicals? These things are all really important. And the interesting thing about stress is that it is cumulative. So every little drop adds up to filling up the stress bucket until it overflows. So even if we can't move some of those big emotional rocks in the time that we're working together as client practitioner, like a bad relationship or, a job that you don't like or doesn't pay you enough, we can remove all of those tiny stressors, which are costing pennies, out of the bank account. And when those pennies get saved, they add up to dollars, and over the weeks and months and years, that adds up to real savings for the body. And then we move into our last pillar, which is supplementation. Supplementation is where clients want to go. Like, they're not even listening to the rest of it. They're just like, where's the supplements? And I get that, because the medical model has sort of trained us that prescription drugs are where it's at, and we don't actually have to change anything if we get the right prescription drug. And that's because prescription drugs are like nature times 5,000. Mm-hmm. And supplements are like nature times 100. So you do get a lot of bang for your buck out of that. But you cannot supplement yourself out of a bad lifestyle. So if you're not sleeping and you're exercising too much and you're not eating the right foods, none of that's going to matter. And we believe in taking a judicious approach to supplementation so that you don't end up with this supplement graveyard of like 5,000 supplements that you bought off of Instagram and tried and didn't work for you. And I know that we all have one of those. So we want to come to supplementation with the more judicious approach so that we get a targeted list of supplements that are most likely to work. So we think of supplementation in 4 different ways. So one is substitution. These soils are not what they used to be. So even if you're eating the best diet in the world, the food is just not as nutritious as the body is expecting. And no matter how healthy you are or the quality of the food that you're eating, we're always going to have to make up for this with supplementation that is for substitution of the minerals and vitamins that are just not there anymore. Then we have our supplementation that's connected to lab data. So sometimes you're going to have systems or organs or tissues that are underperforming, and you're going to want to stimulate those back up, lift their function, help them come back online. And so stimulation is our second category. And then you might have those organs and systems and tissues that are overworking, and they need to be babied and hugged and put to bed early and tucked in with a warm blanket. And so we call that category support, just like bathing them in a good nutritional matrix, making sure that they feel super supported and loved, and that they don't have to work so hard. They can take it easy, and they can get stronger and come back online. And then our last category is self-treatment for pathogens. So if we've got leaky gut, which most of us do, and then compromised immune systems, we're going to have bad guys that move into the gut who shouldn't be there. And even though this is not the problem itself, it is the result of the problem, it's still very costly from the vital reserve bank account. So we do want to engage in some pathogen eradication protocols to move those guys along so that we can return that money to our body's vital reserve savings.
Amazing. I think this is so important, because so many people are leaning in toward influencers for advice, right? And like, as you're saying, they're saying, this is how you exercise, or this is the supplement for this. And really, there needs to be a strategic approach to all of this. So I love that you broke that down for us. And
that's based on the individual. Yeah, exactly. It isn't just like, this supplement's good for everybody, or this exercise is good for everybody, because there is no one size fits all where health is concerned.
Right. And then that's one of your mantras too, is test, don't guess. Right. So the influencers coming out saying this works for hormones. Okay, great. But does it work for yours, right? Yeah. What's your unique situation? So maybe you should test and really assess that before you start taking particular supplements. And then I love what you brought up about all of the DRESS. And if those people don't understand what that she just broke down, our diet, our rest, and all of those things, you also consider that the Dress for Health Success model, correct?
Yes.
Right. And so when our clients are coming to us and they're overwhelmed with everything, I like what you brought up about a mental emotional is sometimes the hardest piece to remove, right? They can't quit their job. They are going to have their children and their spouse and all of those things, but they can do those lifestyle changes. And so talk to us about how you coach practitioners to really focus on those dress protocols, because they're so overwhelmed and they think it's my job, it's my family. How do you keep them compliant with some of those lifestyle factors?
Yep. So the beautiful thing about the dress protocol is that even though it will be different for every client, it's tailor-made to that particular client. It's still the roadmap that you're going to use with each and every client. You will hit all 5 pillars all the time, because that is the way to put the most money back into the vital reserve bank account, is hitting all 5 of those pillars. And I don't know another program that really talks about all 5 pillars. I know some people are diet only, some people are diet supplementation, some people are diet exercise, some people are exercise supplementation. Nobody talks about sleep. Nobody talks about stress reduction. All of that is really, really important. But it is a lot. It is a lot. And so what we train our practitioners to do is drip it out in small batches between regular sessions. So it's not like we do testing and we give someone their protocol and we're like, good luck, see you never again. No, we're there the whole way through. So we meet in a regular cadence, and that's different for each practitioner and how they want to work with their particular clients. I prefer an every other week cadence, so that we have time to implement a change and then see how that change is working. But some people want to meet every week because that's just, they know themselves and they need that sort of level of support. So that type of structure is completely flexible within our program, and FDNs can design that as they choose. But that's the beautiful part about sort of meeting in a regular cadence throughout the time that you're working with someone, is that you can drip out what is a very large dress protocol over a series of weeks. Like, just concentrate on these 3 things in diet, and these 2 things in rest, and these 2 things in exercise, and these 3 things in stress reduction. And we're going to bring on these supplements. And then next time I see you, let's talk about how that's going. And let's see where the obstacles are. Let's see what worked and what didn't work. And then we can do some course correction for those things that aren't working as well as we would want them to be in the middle of the program, because I don't have to go get a doctor to sign off on the protocols. I can make the changes right there.
Awesome. Thank you for breaking that down for us. Now, one of the things you mentioned, and this is functional lab testing is a core part of the FDN model. How do you see at-home lab testing helping not just with identifying, different imbalances, but how does that help with client engagement, education, and long-term compliance, having these at-home lab testing options?
It's so interesting that you asked that, Laini. It's definitely something I've been in observation of for several years now. It's like, how does a home test differ from a doctor's test?
Right.
And I think that there's a lot going on there, and quality is important. So not all at-home lab tests are created equal. So, FDN does a lot of rigorous vetting and researching, and we are in conversation with labs, and we run the labs on ourselves to figure out if we like them and what they really can tell us and what they don't tell us, and if the lab is of high enough quality. So, these sort of labs that are advertised to you on Facebook and Instagram, they're not this, they are at-home testing, but they're not the at-home testing that we're talking about. I just want to make that clear. But when you get your lab test in the mail and you're like, oh, I'm going to read the directions and I'm going to figure out how to prepare for this. And I'm going to take it first thing in the morning. And then I'm going to stick the sample in the freezer and then send it off the next day with FedEx. There's a sort of involvement, like a buy-in, an investment in that you don't have when you just go to the doctor and get a blood draw. And then the doctor comes and says well, it's either normal or it's not normal. And I find that that's really helpful. People are incredibly invested in the testing process. So they want to know what the labs show because they were in it. They were like, I read all the directions and I did all the things and I, collected my urine and I got a poop sample and I cut my own hair and, I spit in some tubes and I'm invested now. Yeah. And they want to know what those labs actually show. And so once you can get in there with them on that level and say, yeah, let's do this. A major mandate of an FDN practitioner is to educate the client. It is not just to say, here are your results and here's your protocol. It is to say, this is what these results show us about who you are and how you've lived your life. And this is how, once you get your health back on track, you can advocate for yourself in the future. This is how you can maintain your own health in the future. This is how you can recognize when your health is deteriorating and get it back on track.
Beautifully said. I love it. I love it. So then let's talk a little bit about protocols that are running around in the ecosphere here. There's a lot of protocol stacking. So there's people and clients trying to do a mold detox, trying to do their hormone stuff, and all at once they're trying these different things, whether that's because they're following an influencer and thought, oh, I should do this. And then they go to their doctor and they think I should try this. And then they work with someone else and they have all these things going on. How does FDN teach their practitioners to sequence the care? You broke it down as far as how we do the lifestyle, but how do we sequence the care in a way that matches the body's actual healing capacity?
Yeah, this is a great question, Laini. So we recognize that most clients go through 3 phases of care. And that would be relief care being the first, this sort of what is super plaguing you? And can I bring in some intelligent allopathy to soothe that, to just take that off the table so that it's not sucking your vital reserve bank account? And it's an early win so that we're building trust. It's sort of the emergency kind of triage of oh, you're constipated and you can't sleep. These are issues that are going to take some time to get to the bottom of, but I want you pooping and sleeping now while we're getting to the bottom of it. And so that intelligent allopathy is really important to sort of bring in to get some of those major symptoms under control while we're working on the deeper issues that are at play there. And then we get into what is called corrective phase. And this is where we get the labs back and we see okay, this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of your functional diagnostic. out of 100% function, what has been lost and where. And now that I can see that, I can bring in this corrective care with diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and that this targeted supplementation that is going to be for stimulation and substitution. And corrective care may be phased in and of itself, where it's like, I'm going to bring in some things to build up vital reserve because I don't think that you have enough vital reserve. So let's work on that for 30 days. And then, all right, now let's bring in some things to sort of soothe and support function in some other places. And we'll bring that in for 30 days. And then we're going to evaluate, do we have enough money in the bank account to do a costly strategy like pathogen eradication, which is going to take money out of the vital reserve bank account? Do we have enough in there? Did we put money in there? And this is why we never start with pathogen eradication, because generally people's bank accounts are pretty empty. And so if you start with something that's going to cost money out of the vital reserve bank account, they're going to feel worse immediately, which is really hard. It's a hard sell. It's a hard hill to climb. So we always sort of put pathogen eradication last after, because ethically we believe that we are obligated to put money into the vital reserve bank account before we take it out. So we're going to get to pathogen eradication last. And then we're going to decide as a practitioner client duo, are we ready to go on maintenance or are we not? And if we're still in corrective, that's fine. Let's sign on for some more coaching sessions. Let's do another 90 days. Let's still work on support and stimulation and pathogen eradication. But if we get to the end of our 90 days or whatever period of time we've agreed to work together, and you're feeling better, and I think that you're on a good path, and you know that my door is always open, maybe we're ready to go to maintenance, where we can really scale back on some of the things that we've been doing. We can bring back foods that we eliminated. We can cut down on supplementation. We can raise the level of exercise and see how those things go, always knowing that the door is open. So really for us, these three phases of care are relief, corrective, and maintenance.
I really like that. And I really appreciate that you brought up the collaborative part of this, that you're actually working with the client to make sure that you're on the right page at the right time.
Yep.
And I think it's really interesting that this idea of if you give the body what it needs, it will heal itself. And that's what you're talking about, taking it slow, taking it one step at a time before we progress to the next thing. It feels almost radical in today's diagnostic culture.
Right?
Everybody
like letting the body speak into its own healing. Yeah,
completely. They're like, no, what's wrong with me? Tell me, right?
Yeah.
So how do you balance faith in the body's intelligence with the use of data, labs, and structured plans?
Yep. So FDNs have ultimate faith in the body. Like, we don't have to teach our cells how to exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide, or how to do these really careful chemical metabolic processes that happen. We don't have to teach our bodies how to breathe or our heart how to beat. These things happen despite us, not because of us. And they will happen every second that we are alive. And that is the intelligence of the body. Mm. And we also know that the body really wants to work at 100% function, and that it does have this healing capacity. Because if I cut myself, it's going to heal. If I break my leg, it's going to heal. So the body is trying to get back to this place of homeostasis. So what we really want to understand is that this bank account that we have to spend on the body not being in balance isn't infinite. If it was infinite, we would never age and we would never die. We would never get sick. So it has a limit. And that's where most of us find ourselves, is where the body is so far in debt that it just can't get back into the black. And we need the body to be in the black before it can be spending money upstream on these bigger stressors and healing opportunities. And so this is why we do this functional diagnostic with the core testing in these 6 areas is to sort of see, where are the bank account balances? Where are they at? How far in the red are we? And how do we get back into the black? And so my job as an FDN practitioner is to bring those bodies' bank accounts back into the black, to give them as much money as I possibly can, and then trust that once the body is back into the positive in its balances, it will know where to spend the money from there on its biggest healing opportunities.
Elizabeth, that was a beautiful description, because I think so many people come in the red, right, with all of their symptoms, and they're negative. They don't have the energy reserves. They don't have the hormone balance. And they start the protocol and they're really upset that they're not getting great results.
Yeah.
But what you just explained is sometimes we have to bring you back up into the place where you actually have the reserves to move forward. And that can be different for everyone, right? But it takes a moment.
Totally.
It takes a while.
It does. And as a practitioner, I don't get to decide what the body's biggest priorities are. Right. I can guess what the body is going to do, but the body is going to do what it thinks its biggest priorities are. And trust and believe that it has a list, and it has been waiting to have enough money to pay some of these bills. So, for example, if I'm really backed up on heavy metal detoxing, my body has been shoving that into bones and my brain and into fat tissue and all of these things, just waiting to have enough money to move it out. And so once I give it enough money, and it's like, oh, great, I can now afford to move these things out, that may actually make me feel terrible.
Yes.
Like I might see my health really, really go downhill while that's going on, but that's really for the better benefit. And so healing is not always this kind of straight line up. And this is why it's important to have the practitioner walking with you the whole way, who can have an eye on this and has some experience to be like, I think we're shedding some heavy metals, and this is going to suck while it's happening, right? But this is actually a really good thing. And when it's over, this is a major, major sucker of vital reserve money out of the bank account that's going to be gone. So the body does know what it's doing, but it's going to do it on its timetable and according to its agenda. And I have to just have faith in that. I have to walk in faith as a practitioner that the body is doing what it needs to do, even if it from the outside is not this like beautiful line up of I feel better, 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 better.
And so when someone goes through the FDN training, are you helping them so that they can, teach that to their clients, that healing is not necessarily a point A to point B, and it's just going to be all roses and it's just going to be wonderful, and they're going to take a test and take some supplements and try to sleep, and it's all going to be great in 2 months?
Yes, we definitely teach this. And the best way that we teach this is by making all of our trainees, they become their very first client. So when you buy the FDN course, you get all of the labs that you're going to learn to run on yourself as part of your tuition. And then you're going to run those labs on yourself, and you're going to get your results. You're going to meet with a mentor, and you're going to sort of talk it out. Like, oh, I thought my results meant this. And the mentor would be like, yes. And did you think about this? And look at how these things are connected. And this is what's going on. And then you'll be able to speak into your own protocol and adjust that as you go along. And you are the practitioner in training, but you are also the first client. And so there's nothing like working on yourself to teach you this lesson.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So as you work with new and veteran FDN practitioners, what are the biggest mindset blocks that keep them from trusting the process? I think what you just laid out is that process that we all have to trust in. But what helps them mainly step into confidence with complex cases?
It's a leap of faith. It is a leap of faith. And in terms of the complex cases, if you're a new FDN, you don't have to take the complex cases. Like, you can wait until you are a seasoned practitioner. And I encourage you to do so, for your first couple of cases, pick the ones where they're eating McDonald's every day and they haven't exercised in 5 years. Like, that's a good place to start and get some experience before you take on, I got autoimmune and I've got, all of the, 15 other things going on. So there is that. And I think where we get into trouble, I think, as practitioners is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Where we think that we have to know what the body is doing, when there's no way that we really can be in touch with somebody else's body to the point where we're like, oh yeah, this is what your body is doing, and this is what it's doing, and I know everything that's going on, and I have all the answers. And so we really try and train them that, like, look, this is the methodology. This is the way to think about it. But there are going to be things that you don't know, and that's okay. The practitioner doesn't have to have 100% of the answers. You just have to be a couple of steps ahead of where your client is.
I love that. And I think what you've laid out so beautifully is the foundations and addressing those hidden stressors, and then having the dress protocol, which is going to support anyone in any stage, which is really powerful too.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's transition to our audience Q&A. Thanks everyone that's been posting. We'll get to as many as we can. If you're watching this as a replay, feel free to post your questions in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a live stream. Okay, so I got first question from our audience. In your experience, which pillar of the dress protocol is most overlooked by practitioners? And I would say practitioners across the board.
I would say there's really two. One, rest. Nobody talks about rest. Nobody is like, are you sleeping 8 hours? And I think, we live in a world full of like YOLO and FOMO and you can sleep when you're dead, and sort of all of those types of messaging that, and this idea that our bodies are machines. Machines don't need to rest. They can run 24 hours a day. Computers don't need to rest. They just need to be reset, like rebooted every now and then. But we are different, and sleeping is not a waste of life. It's actually a way to prolong life. So I do think that is incredibly overlooked, as well as stress reduction. I think that practitioners feel like they cannot raise an issue if they don't know how to solve it. And I don't necessarily know how to help my client get a job that they like, or one that pays more, or solve their relationship issues. But I damn well have to be honest about what the lab data says about how much money those situations are costing their vital reserve bank accounts.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So good. So good. All right, here we go. How do you recommend practitioners begin identifying signs of metabolic chaos when a client's symptoms are vague, overlapping, or they've tried everything with no progress?
So this is where you can't guess. Like, there's no way for you to know what is at play and what isn't. There's no way for you to know what is causing that insomnia. It could be 5 million things. There's no way for you to know what is causing that headache. It could be 10 different issues. There's no way for you to know what is causing that intractable weight gain around the belly. It could be a million different things. And it could be all of those things together, right? Like, I think that the way that academia and research has been set up is that when they do experiments, they can only have one variable at a time. And so it produces research that is a little bit misleading in making us perhaps think that things are single sourced, or that there's only one variable at play in the world, and that's not true. There are very few things in the body, very few issues that are single sourced. It's generally multiple issues coming together to create a symptom. So it is impossible to know when someone shows up in your office with a symptom or several symptoms what their metabolic chaos is. So we must run tests, and we can't just run the one that we love or the two that we like, because we're just leaving too much money on the table, out of the bank accounts. We're just leaving too much money out into the wind. And so I would recommend like getting a process together to look at multiple labs, even if you think it's outside of the realm of possibility that particular system is affected by the way these symptoms are showing up. I guarantee you it is in some way or another. And it's really important to be able to get an idea of how compromised all of the foundational systems are.
Awesome. Thank you. Here's a great question that just came in. Are you seeing a shift in the role of the practitioner from fixer to guide from your training in FDN? Which I think you've kind of answered this a few times, but I think it's a great question.
It is a great question. And I think that speaks to what we were just talking about in terms of what is the biggest mindset shift for practitioners, and like what are they experiencing when they first get into practice. They can't be fixers. They can't. Because there's a bunch of healing opportunities that we don't measure in our foundational systems, right? Like HIDDEN is a lot, but it's not everything. It doesn't include neurological or cardiovascular. There are a bunch of things that we don't measure at all. So we are relying on these 6 systems to predictably change the terrain from one of dysfunction back to function, even if that's like a 49-51% that we got to of dysfunction function. As long as we're a majority back to function, now the body can take it from there, right? So I can't fix what I don't know is there, but I have to trust that the body can. And it is my job to guide my client into these particular strategies that will put as much money in that vital reserve bank account as possible, so that we can get back to having a positive balance in the bank account, and then the body can take it from there. So I can't be a fixer. I can only be a guide.
Amazing. So this has been amazing. But if someone is listening and they're like, ooh, this sounds really great, where do they go to learn more about FDN or how to become an FDN practitioner? And then part 2 of that question, if they are a practitioner already, or a medical provider already, but they're really interested in learning more, or how can they have access to some of the things that you offer? How do we get in touch with you, and how do we learn more?
Absolutely. So you can go to fdntraining.com to learn more about the FDN program. You can book a call with one of our course enrollment advisors to really get down to the nitty-gritty of is this right for me at the place where I'm at? Is this the right fit for me in terms of a program, in terms of how it's taught and the support that is available? And right now, we have a clinical week summit going on. So we've just finished day 2 of it, and it will be going for the rest of the week. So I would encourage you all to register for that and come join some sessions.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today about why this is such an important concept, why metabolic chaos is really something, we need to be aware of, why it's important for us to trust the body's natural ability, and why we need to have some foundational tests and basic protocols in play all the time?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on a lot of these concepts in this session, and I just want to kind of address something that I'm feeling into out there with everyone. If this is something that you feel called to do, but you are afraid, I just want to speak to that for a second. The universe has our back. Life has our back. Life does not give us a desire or a will just to then laugh at us because we can't do it, or we don't have the wherewithal, or we don't have the smarts or the brains or the whatever. If I look down and the ball is in my hands, that means I'm supposed to run it to the end zone, not somebody else. And I'm not supposed to walk off the field with the ball in my hand. I'm supposed to run it down to the end zone. And I know all of you out there have a heart for helping people. That's why you're in this business. And we're really passionate at FDN about helping you craft a business that also lets you have the life that you deserve, that lets you have financial stability and predictable results with your clients, and the ability to take care of your own health and not burn yourself out, to have good emotional boundaries around the way that you are serving your clients, so that you're not agreeing to 9 p.m. appointments and meeting people on weekends if that's not what you want to do. We are here to help you build a life that you love, that feeds you, that works for you, because you are the non-renewable resource. It is you. It is you. So if you are burned out, if you go dark, if your voice is muted, the world loses something that it cannot replace. And we are very passionate at FDN about not allowing that to happen, because we recognize that each of you is a unique signature of healing in this world, and that you are all necessary.
Elizabeth, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's really important for people to hear that and to be reminded that this is a field that we are called to, and we need to stay engaged in it. And I've loved this discussion and learning more about Metabolic Chaos, about the FDN program, about dress protocols. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today and for all the questions that we had. Once again, if you are watching this on a replay, you can post your questions in the comments and we'll get them answered. Thank you again, Elizabeth, for joining me. And once again, we can learn about you at fdntraining.com. Is that right?
FDNtraining.com. And I think there's right on that page, you can find a link to book a call with the course enrollment advisor. Come to our clinical week. We're doing a lot of interesting sessions. Get on our mailing list. Just stay engaged with us. Awesome. Now may not be the right time, but down the road may.
We'll get all those links posted so you'll know all about where to get in touch. And then make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our live streams. We've got our best practices coming up every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and our bi-weekly networking coffee circle is coming up as well. This week, our coffee circle live stream is with Dr. Shivani. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Laini. Thank you, everyone.